All right, this is Unit 7, Internet, Intranets, and Extranets. So the internet is a worldwide collection of computer systems and networks. It's not controlled by a single entity, and it's connected via fiber optic cable backbone, which we talked very briefly. I mentioned that some homes have it, some offices have it. The history of the internet, though, the project started within the DoD as the ARPANET back in 1969. In 1987, the National Science Foundation took over the project and shifted it towards educational purposes. During those times, the World Wide Web that we use today with web browsers did not exist. The World Wide Web was invented in 1989. So prior to the World Wide Web, how did we access the internet? We had several things. I've mentioned email previously. We had this thing called FTP, or the File Transfer Protocol. You installed special software in your computer. You could initially just upload, download files, and later you could drag and drop files. You could use Telnet, which would allow you to use a command line interface to connect to a system. That's how I used to have to check my email when I was in college. And then Gopher. This was the immediate predecessor to the World Wide Web browser. You had a piece of software called the Gopher, and it used text-based search and linkage to get access to information. And then lastly, we had the predecessor to Reddit, I suppose, called the Network News Protocol, or news groups. This is effectively the same, I don't want to call it exactly the same. Very similar to what Reddit is today. Okay? Now with the World Wide Web, we ended up with a graphical interface for us to use. We had these things called web browsers. We had hypermedia and hypertext, and a language called HTML, which brought everything together. Okay. Now, DNS is, think of it as the phone book of the internet. Much like you probably don't know your friend's phone number off the top of your head, but you do know their name. The DNS translates the domain name for Johnny, for example, or www.google.com to an IP address, which is like a phone number, okay? And then the uniform resource locator is just the web page address. Now within DNS, we have top level domains, and we have a lot of them now. So initially we had .com, .net, .edu, and .gov. Okay? Those are generic top level domains. Now we have new versions like .cloud, .me, .biz, .news, etc. There's tons of them. Then we also have country code top level domains, and every country in the world has these. Okay? So .us, .uk, etc. For internet connections, in the home, we typically have DSL, cable, and fiber optic. Outside of the home in the business, we have these same options. We also have things like T1 lines, DS4 lines, etc. Okay. Tools and search engines. So we have browsers, and there's many different browsers out there, but the most common are Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, and Internet Explorer. We have search engines, obviously Google. You may be surprised to know there's one called Bing. Don't know anybody who uses it, but it exists. And then we have DuckDuckGo, which supposedly has a more privacy-focused browser. I haven't used it myself. Previously, we've had Yahoo, WebCrawler, InfoSeek, Ask Jeeves, etc. Okay. There's been a whole list of former search engines that don't exist anymore. And then we have directories like Yahoo, where they kind of organize information together for you. So search engines are effectively just a robot that goes out and crawls and searches for information across the internet. That information is loaded into a large database. The search engines create a database index so you can find things quickly. And then your web browser connects to the search engine index to find information. HTML is the hypertext markup language. This is an example of what it looks like. This would make a web page. If you copied and pasted this into a file, loaded it in your web browser, you'd see that it doesn't look like this in your web browser. You'll have, this is a sample page at the top. And then you'll have the sample bold text will be bolded, the sample heading text will be heading, and then the href line will be a link to the Google website. So prior to web browsers, we had text-based interfaces. You had to remember commands. If you're doing the command line interface homework, you know what I'm talking about. You had to have programming skills. You had limited support for images. Video was not supported. You can see ancient versions of websites out on archive.org. So you can go out and see what Target looked like 20 years ago. It's like a time machine, but you don't have to worry about getting stuck in the past. Internet services, you've got email. So you have a simple mail transfer protocol, which is used for sending mail. You have two different protocols for accessing email, POP and IMAP. This is when you get your internet email from a service provider like Comcast. You usually use those. When we use Google Mail or similar sites, we use HTTP and HTTPS because it's just wrapping it into a web-based system. We could have discussion groups, not as common anymore, but they do exist. We could have chat or instant messaging. There's different types. So we've got Slack, instant messaging like Google Chat, Yahoo Messenger, Snapchat. And then we've got internet relay chat as well. Then we've got internet services. So internet telephony, voice over internet protocol or VoIP. In this case, phone service is traveling over the internet rather than a physical phone line. Okay. Then we move on to what's an intranet. So intranets are what we have internally. It's a network within an organization with websites that are private, not public. Okay. If we have an intranet, the public can't access those. We use it to share internal information. Sometimes we call these portals. Then we have extranets, which is how we connect different intranets of business partners, and this allows us to collaborate across different businesses. So those of you who are supply chain majors, supply chain management systems are an example of doing extranets. Web 2.0 and 3.0, we had blogs, wikis, social networking, okay? And then we've got the Internet of Everything. So today we've kind of shifted towards everything is connected to the internet, or if it isn't today, it will be. So we call that the Internet of Things, or IoT. So if you've got Ring doorbells, Nest thermostats, whatever it might be, these are all Internet of Things. They're connected to the internet. And then finally, we have the Internet of Me, which is personalized information for yourself. That's really ramping up here.